same thing can be said for risk management, right? It's like without ever going over risks and properly evaluating all the risks and retiring those risks, how do we know for sure that we have retired all the risk and the product is safe and effective?
Let's go!
Hey, Joris.
Hello, Nick.
How are you today?
I'm good.
Great. Joris, I was just thinking we're engaged with clients and we're talking about deliverables and things that we're doing as part of our project. One of the things that's right at the top of the list is a DHF, or design history file. And I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about that and we can explain what is a design history file, I guess, of course, and then why it's so important.
Yeah, that's a good question. So a design history file is something that we deliver in addition to the product that we're actually developing. And a design history file is really a accumulation of all the documents that are created as part of the design process,
right,
and that are shown to the FDA or to another regulatory body. And then in terms for the FDA, that is a way to evaluate if a proper design process has been followed.
Right.
So think about product requirements and risk assessments. They're all part of a design history file. And so if you think about following a design process, we often get questions as in, hey, that documentation seems to be quite burdensome.
Absolutely.
Time, right? Because it takes a lot of time to fill out documents. And that's true. Like, there's no question about it. But it's also integral into the design process. So a document is kind of the output of design thinking, and without putting, for example, proper product requirements down, how can a team actually be designing the right product?
Sure, that makes sense.
And same thing can be said for risk management, right? It's like without ever going over risks and properly evaluating all the risks and retiring those risks, how do we know for sure that we have retired all the risk and the product is safe and effective? So it is to enforce proper design process for the engineers that are actually designing the product, but it's also a way then later on for a regulatory body to evaluate if that design process has been followed and if the product is safe and effective.
Well, that's very good. And I guess, just hearing about that, if we're doing a quick, rapid iteration on a design or an idea, right, we're ideating on a concept, I can see to a client where, a design history file, oh man, we got to document all the stuff and track it down. I can see that would be challenging. How do we address that in some of our project work?
That is also a good question, because that's exactly where we're trying to be flexible in the beginning.
Right.
And especially when a product team is relatively small and we're still in very conceptual, we don't want to go to extensive risk assessment because it just would be taking up all of our time.
Sure.
Instead of focusing on, hey, do we even have a feasible
technical concept
in hand right here, right? So finding that right balance between documenting the process, documenting requirements and risks. As an example, instead of just trying to design a product from the get-go without some of that, that's exactly the balance that we're trying to find. And I think where we have a lot of great design tools developed is just out of our quality management system. We have tools that we can that help us a lot with small teams to be very flexible and effective in getting to that product concept quickly. And then once we're there, we have a proper gate review and say, okay, this is the point where now we start to actually embrace all those documents that are part of that design history file, lead to that design history, the file that eventually go to the FDA.
Very cool.
So two-stage approach. First, very flexible, and then later on, much more rigid.
Okay, I like that. Cool. Okay. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Have a great
day.